This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The first 500 of my viewers to use the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial. Let's say that you're the parent of an incredibly cute and incredibly difficult preschooler. In between stepping on Legos and rides on the balance bike, you start to think about kindergarten. It's a year or two away, but all the other parents are already talking about it. The big question they ask you is, where are you going to send your kid? You're one of the majority of Americans living in a metropolitan area, so this isn't a simple question. Public, private, or charter? Do you send your kids to the neighborhood school, or a magnet school, or do you move to the suburbs? The possible answers to these questions and the information needed to make a decision actually explain a lot about the problems facing US cities today. So let's jump in and pick a school and discuss some of these issues. Let's break down the school options for your soon-to-be kindergartner. First, you have the neighborhood public school. No matter where you live within the attendance boundary of a public elementary school, itself located within the boundary of a public school district. Everyone within the school district boundaries pays for the school via their property taxes. Your public elementary school is probably pretty close and is free to attend, as the property taxes cover the school's budget. Second, you could send your kid to a private school. These schools do not receive funding from property taxes, but often charge families tuition to attend. Sometimes private schools are affiliated with a religious organization, which can provide for some of the school's budget. Private schools can be anywhere. There may be one close to your house, or the nearest one could be quite far away. Charter schools are a third option. They receive government funding like a public school and do not charge tuition. They are not neighborhood public schools like typical public schools, however, and they are controversial for issues around accountability and exploitation by for-profit entities. We don't have time to dive into those issues in this video. Finally, if the neighborhood public school is not to your liking and the other options are too far or too expensive, you could move. It's not uncommon for people to move to be within the school attendance boundary of their choosing or to be close to a desired private or charter school. These are the 4 major choices here. I've left out homeschooling, magnet schools, Hogwarts, and other uncommon options. I've talked about these schools in terms of cost and location, but someone like you also cares about school quality. Everybody wants to send their kids to school where they can receive a great education. Now, when you're trying to pick out schools based on quality, you're going to get information from a couple of sources: word of mouth and greatschools.com ratings. When thinking about kindergarten, parents will ask other parents where they send their school-age children and if they like it there. They will supplement that research with online searches, and Great Schools is the most ubiquitous rater of schools out there. Its ratings are even integrated into real estate listing websites. They rate schools on a 1 through 10 scale, and you think to yourself that you'd at least like to send your kid to a school that's rated 7 or above. Those must be the really good schools, right? So once you figure out how much you want to pay for kindergarten, where you want your kid to go, and how much school quality matters to you, it's time to make a decision. It was a tough choice, but you decided to buy a house in the suburbs where the schools are the highest rated. You've been renting until now, but your kid is getting older and you'd like to have a second someday. It just makes sense to buy a house and get some more room. It's a no-brainer to buy a house in a public school district with quality schools from kindergarten through high school. This hypothetical assumes we're able to tell the best school based on our research. And this hypothetical also assumes that everyone has the same choices. If you are low income, it might not be possible to attend a private school or move to a whole new district. Your options are severely limited, essentially just your neighborhood public school or adding your name to a charter school lottery. But you and families like you move to be in good school districts, and those who can't stay. Everyone's choice is understandable given their situations, but this difference in mobility leads to segregation by income, which often compounds existing urban segregation by race and ethnicity. Segregation on its own is bad, but it's worse due to how the US schools are funded. Property taxes fund school districts, and school districts with high land values lead to schools with big budgets. Of course, the opposite is true too. Poor neighborhoods often have underfunded schools, though they may be eligible for state and federal subsidies. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. Wealthy schools attract wealthy residents and stay wealthy, while poor schools can't attract wealthy residents and stay poor. One of the real ironies in all this is that many of the schools in low to moderate income neighborhoods are actually quite good, filled with great teachers, staff, and programs. But parents look at those great schools rankings, see a low number, and move on. Standardized test scores are the data used to inform great schools ratings. But standardized test scores don't really say much about school quality. That's because teachers in schools are only one influence on how well a child does academically. Students in low-income areas may have home lives that make it difficult for them to excel on these tests. Parents may work multiple jobs, which makes it harder for them to assist on homework, for example. Without support from home, kids don't do as well on tests, even if the school is top-notch. Parents in wealthier homes often have the means to provide tutoring and lessons for their child. The school quality can be the same, but the child who gets tutored will likely have higher test scores. This is why visiting schools and meeting with teachers, parents, and administrators is more valuable than just looking at scores that rank schools on a 1 to 10 scale. So we know that schools and school districts contribute some to segregation by income. So it's probably no surprise that where the boundaries for these districts are drawn can have a major impact on a community. Homes in a good school district will be valued more than one in a poor district. One possible solution to this is to have very large school districts that encompass wealthy and poor neighborhoods. This way, school tax revenues can be spread more evenly, and there's less of a difference between schools. School district consolidation happened quite a bit after the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court ruling back in 1954, as a way to ensure white kids and black kids were receiving education of a similar quality in integrated schools. Recently, though, these large school districts have been under assault from a movement called school district secession. It's sort of the opposite of school district consolidation. Some people want to break away parts of large school districts to form their own smaller ones. Universally, these new districts consist of upper-class white areas, guaranteeing that schools in those districts are well funded. The proposed borders for these new districts are often gerrymandered to include all of the upper-class neighborhoods and exclude all others. Meanwhile, the poorer and more diverse areas lose that revenue and become more segregated. Proponents often argue that they just want more local control over educational policy in their area, but the result is always an unequal split that favors the wealthier residents. Since 2000, more than 200 communities have tried to secede, and nearly 50 have been successful. Large school districts without secession isn't a silver bullet for good schools over a large area. School attendance boundaries for elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools can still be drawn according to racial and economic lines, segregating schools within the district itself. Schools in these districts may not see radically different funding than schools in separate districts, but there's still a social cost to segregated schools that can lead to worse outcomes for poor and minority students anyway. Students attending schools in highly segregated areas do worse than those in integrated schools. In fact, there's no evidence that integrated schooling harms any demographic group in any age or subject area. Integrated schools can reduce prejudice among students. There's also evidence that white kids attending primarily white schools are actually worse off than white kids attending schools with more diversity. White kids in diverse schools see more robust classroom discussion, develop better critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and have overall higher academic achievement. These kind of results can be difficult to capture in coarse, one-dimensional great school scores, and they go against some of the conventional wisdom of parents looking to send their kids to a great school. For many, when they picture a good school, it's a shiny new school in an affluent suburb. There's a pervasive idea that good parents send their kids to schools in the suburbs, but the local public school down the street may offer an equally good or better education, even if it's not immediately obvious and exemplified on standardized test scores. And if more kids attended their neighborhood schools, it could reduce school segregation. So I guess what I'm saying is that cities are a product of the decisions we make. We may think that our choices only affect us or our family, but they can have profound impacts on our community as a whole. Now, there's no one right answer to where to send your kid to school, and this video doesn't even talk about all of the options. And I'm not trying to shame anyone for making one decision or another, but I think it's worth knowing that your child isn't the only one who's going to feel the impact of your decision. Okay, so did you notice the maps in this video? They're pretty good, right? I made them myself, and I learned the skills to do it over at Skillshare. I used a tutorial on 3D illustration by the folks at DKNG Studios. They helped me create isometric designs using Adobe Illustrator, and it was so much fun to do. Skillshare also has over 25,000 classes in design, business, technology, and more, so if 3D illustration isn't your thing, you can still find something to learn from. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Join the millions of students learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for my viewers. Get 2 months of Skillshare for free. To sign up, visit the link in the description. The first 500 people get 2 months of unlimited access for free. Act now for the special offer and start learning today.